Who goes there?
Carly sent you, did he? Ever the bloody busybody. Maybe to him you don't seem so strange. The name's
Half-Wolf Blaidd, the bestest boy in Elden Ring.
Blaidd! Blaidd is a terrifying, heavy-hitting hybrid fighter who specializes in forcing his opponents into unfavorable situations, all while dealing huge amounts of damage in only a few openings. With his royal greatsword in hand, Blaidd sports excellent range and huge attack buttons that are difficult to challenge straight on. And when coupled with some relatively strong burst movement options, he's more than capable of playing the game as a rushdown character should his player commit to his offensive potential. However, what is some of Blaidd's strongest aspects can also act as a double-edged sword, as the Half-Wolf's very large frame makes him fairly easy to hit and even easier for some characters to juggle. As a result, Blaidd will often end up getting hit far more than he's hitting his foes. And while he does sport a high weight value, that only means there's a chance that the combos against him have a chance to go on longer than they would for other characters. As a Blaidd player, it's your job to effectively mix your offensive and defensive tools, as sticking to a single playstyle will end up heavily limiting Blaidd's options in the fight. Also, try to keep your opponent at mid-range for a majority of the fight, as that's where most of Blaidd's buttons will excel in most situations. If your opponent does get in too close, however, use your smaller, faster buttons and grabs to throw them back into mid-range, all before cutting them down like the beast you are. Blaidd stands as a very tall humanoid character, coming only short of Ridley in terms of height, and dethroning Ganondorf as the tallest humanoid character in the game. An imposing foe draped in a cloak of flowing fur, Blaidd can be considered one of the Tarnished's greatest allies during the events of Elden Ring alongside Alexander the Warrior Jar, and Patches too, in a way. Blaidd is shown to be a master swordsman who wields incredible strength, as he is able to swing around his enormous royal greatsword with relative ease. In terms of warriors, there's next to no mortal in the lands between that can match him in battle, with his feats of strength being his ability to take on and win against a horde of Black Knife assassins, defeating Bloodhound Darrowell with relative ease, and even assisting in the defeat of Radahn, a demigod so powerful he subconsciously held back the stars in the sky. The only one who could seemingly match his prowess was the player's character, as even though they fought several battles together and seemed to develop a friendship, it ends up being the player's character that ends Blaidd's life once he loses control of himself. While his life was cut short in the lands between, it's here in Smash that he will live on, and he's more than capable of matching any warrior on the field of battle. Also, it should be mentioned up front that while we are past Valentine's Day, I would like to consider this a Valentine's Day video. Why? Simple. Because Blaidd is quite dreamy, and I'm not afraid to say it. I'm also not the only one who thinks so either.
I want Blaidd to kiss me on the lips and tell me that we make a great team. Then I want him to pick me up and carry me to his little wolf hovel. This is for you. We make a great team.
In terms of mobility options, Blaidd has 2 jumps along with the ability to crawl and wall jump. With his giant striking greatsword that exudes an icy chill and large fluffy cloak, Blaidd's design feels synonymous with the element of ice. As a matter of fact, many fans believe that the reason Blaidd wears such a thick cloak is to keep himself warm from the constant chill of the royal greatsword, regardless of the fact that Blaidd is a reference to Guts from Berserk. This chilly ensemble, on top of the icy potential of the royal greatsword, led to me coming up with a unique character mechanic that, while it might not be what you'd expect from Elden Ring, it feels right at home as the backbone of the Half-Wolf's kit. Icy Howl. Icy Howl is a unique buff special that will have Blaidd let out a chilly call to the skies above, this howl then causing his royal greatsword to become encased in a layer of jagged ice. At this point, the next special the player uses will be enhanced, either by having its stats greatly improved or by having its properties altered, and these enhanced specials are capable of opening up unique setups and combo paths that aren't normally possible with Blaidd's base kit. All 4 of Blaidd's specials can be enhanced with Icy Howl, and while this sounds enticing, there is a notable risk involved when trying to activate the buff. In total, Icy Howl will start up as 55 frames long and sports a 12-frame cancel window, meaning that the player will need to leave themselves open to potential damage while performing the buff. And while it might sport a hit of super armor on said startup, this armor can be bypassed by grabbing Blaidd. We'll talk more about how this move enhances Blaidd's specials when we get to said section. So for now, let's now move on to his normals and begin discussing the attacks that make up this terrifying combatant. Blaidd's normals will mainly be comprised of attacks utilizing his trademark weapon, the Royal Greatsword. On top of this dangerous blade, Blaidd will also make use of his immense strength through vicious bites and blows using his free hand, with his overall playstyle showing a blend between a refined swordsman and a violent beast. Blaidd's neutral combo is Royal Assault, a series of 3 wide-hitting slash attacks that will push Blaidd forward as he attacks. Thanks to his incredible strength, Blaidd will swing the Royal Greatsword out in front of himself with only one hand, and while he has enough power to control it with a reasonable amount of finesse, the lack of support from his other hand means that these attacks are slow and the gap between them is a bit lengthy. As a result, it might be possible for characters to escape from this combo at higher percents, and at that point, there's far better buttons you can be throwing out should you wish to control the neutral. Try using the first hit of this combo as a spacing tool, as it provides the largest cancel window and is fairly safe at mid-range. Blaidd's forward tilt is Ice Flows, a 2-hit target combo that will have Blaidd perform a sweeping slash in front of himself, all before rushing forward and performing another sweeping slash. This dangerous pair of attacks can be used to set up some very dangerous 50-50 scenarios, especially if your opponent blocks the first hit and is roughly at mid-range. Should your opponent continue to hold their shield, the player is capable of canceling the first hit of this attack into either a dash or a grab, making it a great way to set up a throw combo. But if you're feeling a bit ballsy and your opponent's shield is already running a little low, whacking them with the second hit should be more than enough to shatter that shield to pieces. Should you hit your opponent with the first hit, you can either transition into the second hit normally or cancel into the same options as before, which is nice as the first hit might knock the opponent out of the range of the second hit at higher percent values. All of these mind games create a dangerous neutral tool and one of the last attacks you want to second guess when you're on the defensive. Blaidd's up tilt is Cold Crescent, a powerful overhead slash that will cover a solid range both above and in front of Blaidd as he attacks. Thanks to the immense size of the Royal Greatsword, this move sports the potential to be a very dangerous anti-air for opponents trying to land, or just a straight up kill option at higher percents. But make sure you land it, as this move's recovery time is its biggest detriment. If you can predict your opponent's landing attempts or want to challenge a platform above you, there's very few most characters can do to hit you through the massive disjoint of the Royal Greatsword. But should you throw this move out at the wrong time, they won't have to worry about the disjoint. Blaidd's down tilt is Claw Cutter, a unique pressure tool that will have Blaidd slash low at the ground with his free hand. This attack striking rather quickly and pushing Blaidd forward as he attacks. In comparison to his regular blade attacks, this is Blaidd's quickest grounded normal and a great way for challenging foes looking to rush you down, with it even being able to link into up tilt or an aerial at low to mid percents. However, it also has the honor of being the only one of Blaidd's grounded normals that lacks a massive disjointed hitbox. As a result, it's best to use this move only at close range, as not only can this lead to unwanted trades, but clashes with potential disjoints from opponents who also use swords. It might be situational, but when it has the time to shine, this move can be a real game changer. Blaidd's dash attack is Rushing Beast, a huge advancing attack that will have Blaidd slash out in front of himself with a massive horizontal slash. This move is based on the light dash attack of Ultra Great Swords in Elden Ring, and much like in said game, this move's speed and recovery time are notably bad to compensate for its incredible kill power. And thanks to the range of the Royal Greatsword, this has the potential to be one of the strongest dash attacks in the entire game. However, that recovery time has gotten many an overreaching player in trouble or potentially killed when used haphazardly in Elden Ring, so be sure to take care when using it here in Smash. For his get-up attacks, Blaidd will attack around himself with either his free hand or his foot, all while performing a huge vertical chop with the Royal Greatsword for his ledge attack. Blaidd's smash attacks are all designed to be true showings of the Half-Wolf's power, both as a swordsman and as a dangerous beast. All of these attacks sport huge damage numbers and range thanks to a mix of Blaidd's strength and the size of the Royal Greatsword, but their incredibly slow startup and recovery time make them very easy to punish, regardless if these attacks miss or are blocked. For his forward smash, Blaidd will put a unique spin on his normal attack strategy and elect to use both of his hands to cleave any opponent in his path in half, with this move being titled Royal Executioner. While Blaidd's immense strength allows him to throw around his Royal Greatsword with one hand, acting in an extra hand not only adds extra strength, but also control, and as a result, this happens to be the fastest of Blaidd's smash attacks despite it also being the strongest. While this might sound outlandish, especially when the sword is next to impossible to challenge from the front thanks to the disjoint on the blade, that speed doesn't account for the recovery time. As a result, getting a Blaidd player to whiff this is one of the easiest and safest ways to secure a kill, regardless of what character he's going up against. Blaidd's up smash is Frost Wave, a unique take on your average huge uppercut swing that will have Blaidd stab his Royal Greatsword into the ground during the move's charge animation. Once the attack initiates, Blaidd will use his incredible strength to rip his blade out of the ground, the force of the pull causing a wave of ice and snow to fly through the air as he performs a huge overhead swing. This move's attack range is definitely its greatest feature, as the wave of ice shares the same hitbox with the Royal Greatsword, and that means that regardless if you're hit by this, or this, or stuck in the middle, you're going to get hit all the same. Even if that's the case, the Ice Wave's damage is notably lower than that of the actual Blaidd, and as a result, this move sports an unexpected sweet spot. Finally, Blaidd's down smash is Blizzard Circlet, a more simple showing of Blaidd's strength that will have him perform a spinning attack with his Royal Greatsword, covering a wide horizontal range and being one of the last things your opponent wants to be on the receiving end of when they're getting up from the ledge. This attack will start in front of Blaidd and end behind him, hitting on either side a single time with slightly more power in the first hit. So if you feel that extra launch power will be the difference between a kill and an edgeguard, perhaps it'd be worth it to flick yourself in the other direction before using this move. Just make sure you make it count, as a blade that big doesn't come to a stop very effectively. Despite his large size, Blaidd has got a surprisingly strong set of jumps, and this is a feature he's made players more than well aware of during his boss fight in Elden Ring. However, despite having an above-average jump height, Blaidd's weapon is still enormous and hard to maneuver, and as a result, his aerials will cover a wide range but be limited to a single aerial per jump cycle. This leads to Blaidd being a character you're going to want to be very careful with when you're trying to engage your opponent in the air, especially since a wrong aerial choice can lead to some serious punishment. Blaidd's neutral air is Crescent Claw, a close-range attack that will have Blaidd slash out in front of himself using his free hand. This vertical hit starting above Blaidd and ending below him. As you might expect from the fact that it's his only aerial that doesn't use his sword as its main weapon, this is Blaidd's fastest aerial attack and is arguably his safest landing option despite the fact that it lacks the huge disjoints of his sword. It's also the only one of Blaidd's aerials that can be cancelled from a short hop, allowing for surprise grounded tilt or a quick shield depending on where you stand in the neutral. Blaidd's forward air is Royal Swipe, a wide-hitting neutral option that will have Blaidd slash out in front of himself and knock anything in his path away with heavy force. This move's design and animation is based on the jumping light slash of ultra great swords in Elden Ring, and just like the attacks it's based on, this is mainly designed to be a spacing tool, along with being one of your best edge guarding tools as there's very few characters in the game that can safely trade with you. Just be sure to keep in mind that this attack's recovery is very slow, so don't throw this out unless you're sure it has a chance to hit. Blaidd's up air is Full Moon Rising, a unique attack option that will have Blaidd perform a front flip with his blade resting on his shoulder. As he flips, Blaidd will use the forward momentum as a spring for his sword, creating a powerful arcing slash that will hit hard and confirm kills at fairly reasonable percents. While this might lack the overall range of his other sword-related aerials, it has the benefit of being the quickest sword aerial both on startup and on recovery, so if you're going to pressure your opponent in the air, this is the best aerial to do it with. Blaidd's back air is Ice Ring, a simple aerial reversal that will have Blaidd throw out his sword, attacking with a wide-hitting horizontal slash that will deal heavy damage to anything in its path. In comparison to his other aerials, this move sports much higher launch power and higher knockback growth, allowing for some effective kill confirms against an opponent not respecting the size of your sword's disjoint. Just be sure you take care when trying to land with it, as poor spacing can lead to an easy punish thanks to the horrid landing lag this move sports. Finally, Blaidd's down air is Falling Star, a brutal fastfall aerial that will have Blaidd hold onto the blade of his sword, holding it almost like a guillotine as he falls through the air. This move is based on one of Blaidd's attacks in his boss fight, where he'll leap through the air and attempt to take off the player's head in a crude manner. And here in Smash, making contact with this move will spike any foe in its path and drag the opponent down with Blaidd, whether it's into the stage or the blast zone below it. Also, it should be mentioned that, thanks to the way he holds his weapon, this move's range is fairly short, so if you decide to go for this attack, you're putting yourself at notably higher risk than Blaidd's other aerials. Blaidd will grab his opponent with his free hand, picking them off the ground with relative ease before sinking his teeth into them for a slow but fairly powerful pummel. As for his throws, Blaidd will use that incredible strength to toss his opponent around like a ragdoll full of feathers, with these throw options being designed to simply create space. And by space, I mean tossing them back into the effective range of that terrifying sword of yours. Most sword fighters in Smash usually suffer from having lackluster throws, but thankfully, Blaidd is not your average swordsman. Blaidd's forward throw is Windpipe Crusher, a rather blunt name for a simple throw that will have Blaidd increase the grip he has on his opponent's neck, all before whipping them into the floor in front of himself to launch the foe away. This throw's damage and knockback are fairly average, with its main use being to set up offstage pressure or simply get an opponent out of your face. Whatever the reason, its purpose is straightforward and isn't going to be a throw you see too often because of it. Blaidd's up throw is Freezing Rain, a more aggressive attack that will have Blaidd drag his opponent across the ground before tossing them high up into the air. Compared to his other throw options, this throw sports the highest knockback growth, allowing the player to use it as a kill option at higher percents. At lower percents, however, it might be possible to follow up this throw with an aerial against the game's heavier fighters. Against the majority of the cast, however, the best you can hope for is setting up potential damage when the opponent tries to land. Blaidd's back throw is Chew Toy Tosser, a vicious throw option that will have Blaidd sink his teeth into his opponent's neck or bodily equivalent before tossing the opponent behind him. This can essentially be described as a much stronger version of his forward throw, with it mainly being used to create space and toss out opponents trying to rush him down. And while its damage is higher, its knockback growth isn't high enough to justify using it as a kill option. Still cool to watch though, so if that's enough for you, by all means, go nuts. Finally, Blaidd's down throw is Spine Cracker, a two-part throw that will have Blaidd smash his opponent into the ground with the hilt of his Royal Greatsword, all before bringing his foot down on them to bounce them off the floor and up into the air. Like his up throw, the player can use this as a potential combo throw at lower percents, but since it lacks the knockback growth, it's going to be a throw that quickly loses its purpose as the match progresses. It's time to talk about Blaidd's specials, and these are going to be a bit strange when compared to the likes of my movesets for the Tarnished and the Chosen Undead. As an NPC, Blaidd doesn't inherently have to follow the same rules as the player's character, and as a result, this allows him to perform a series of abilities that your local maidenless Tarnished only wishes they could get their hands on. And while it's possible for the player to use at least one of these specials, the difference between mimicry and the real thing is notably large. Starting with his neutral special, Blaidd will make use of a unique attack that's designed to help him control space and deal with the crippling anxiety that comes with playing a walking tank. And while it's an attack that's unique to Smash, it feels right at home with the rest of Blaidd's kit and truly shows off the icy potential of the Royal Greatsword. Pillar to the Moon. At the start of the attack, Blaidd will cloak his blade in ice and perform a huge two-handed vertical slash. This slash launching a wave of ice and snow up from the ground that will form into a large curved pillar. This pillar of ice will act as a temporary wall that neither Blaidd nor his opponent can pass through, with the pillar also being able to absorb incoming projectiles. This provides Blaidd with an effective wall that can force his opponent to enter his physical damage range. And thanks to the length of his blade, the player can strike opponents on the other side of the wall, but if your sword makes contact with the pillar, a blow from your sword is the least of their worries. Once Blaidd hits the pillar with a physical attack, it will cause the pillar to shatter as he launches a wave of icicles in front of himself, these shards dealing heavy damage at close range and covering a sizable amount of the stage. While the damage will fall off greatly at longer ranges, it will still cause the opponent to flinch, so you can still use it to pressure zoners trying to build up their main projectile options. Also, it should be mentioned that Blaidd's opponents are also capable of breaking the pillar, although it will take 2 hits as opposed to Blaidd's 1, and instead of launching shards back at Blaidd, it will only cause the pillar to fall apart. This move also has a unique aerial version that will have Blaidd dive back towards the ground, driving his sword into the stage and creating a pillar of ice on contact, making this a dangerous tool for gaining the drop on foes trying to pressure you from below. And that's not even accounting for the power behind the initial attack. Yes, both the ground and the aerial version of this move can be used as a kill option, and since you can only have one pillar active on the stage at any given time, chances are high you're going to be using this move as a kill confirm more than its actual purpose. Also, if Blaidd is enhanced by Icy Howl, Pillar to the Moon's initial attack will cause opponents to become frozen inside the pillar as opposed to launching them, which in turn leads to potential follow-ups and a much higher damage payout. It will also take opponents 3 hits to destroy the enhanced pillar, although its charge will not increase in damage. Speaking of Icy Howl, this aforementioned buff special can again be performed by inputting shield and B at the same time. This move will leave the player open to incoming damage while they perform the taunt, meaning that using this when your opponent is either playing neutral or on the offensive is a great way to get yourself killed. Since it's such a big part of Blaidd's game plan, it's also going to be a move the players anticipate throughout the entirety of the match, so try to only use it when your opponent is on the defensive or actively trying to recover. Moving on to his side special, Blaidd will show off his wild side through the use of a powerful command grab that, while it might not be the stock closing monster that is a Alolan Whip, it has the potential to be a dangerous game changer once it lands. Predator's Lunge. With this, Blaidd will rush forward and attempt to grab the closest opponent, all before forcing them to the ground. At this point, Blaidd will sink his teeth into his opponent's neck, all before tearing out their throat and dealing a huge amount of damage in the process. After the damage is dealt, the player will then have the option to perform one of 3 unique follow-up attacks in order to end the command grab, with Blaidd using his greatsword to launch opponents either forwards, backwards, or electing to skip the sword launch and simply get up, leaving your opponent in a hard knockdown state. Both versions of the launcher are powerful enough to confirm kills, but should the player elect to go for the hard knockdown, they can potentially score even more damage should they read their opponent get up correctly, and thanks to his overall fantastic range, Blaidd's Okezemi potential is dangerously strong. It should also be mentioned that Blaidd will force his opponent to the ground if this move is used in the air, meaning that if this move is used over a blast zone, you can indeed Blaidd aside your opponent. Also, when under the effects of Icy Howl, Predator's Lunge will deal increased damage and gain a unique 4th launch angle, where Blaidd will launch his opponent straight up into the air with much greater force. Moving on to his recovery special, Blaidd will make use of the trademark weapon ability that many Tarnished have been able to use thanks to the Royal Greatsword, this being known as Wolf's Assault. This powerful vertical recovery will have Blaidd leap up into the air, all before coming down hard onto the stage below him. Once he's made contact with the stage, Blaidd's sword will release a powerful outward blast of frost that will deal big damage to anyone who tries to rush him down after dodging the initial attack. And it's even more deadly should an opponent be hit by the initial jumping strike, as doing so will lock them into the frosty blast. For those that watched my Tarnished video, you'll know that this is the same recovery I gave to him, with it mainly being a highly damaging recovery option but one that lacked verticality. Well, with Blaidd, you don't have to worry about that, because, as he's not afraid to show you in Elden Ring, Blaidd's potential far surpasses that of the Tarnished. In the hands of Blaidd, this move sports a lot of similarity to that of Ike's Aether, with it being a huge vertical recovery that's fully armored but is something that the player is locked into until they touch the ground. Only Wolf's Assault allows the player to alter their horizontal trajectory. Also, when under the effects of Icy Howl, this move will also sport armor once Blaidd touches the ground, allowing him to safely land while also dealing extra damage from the Frosty Blast. The recovery range, however, does not change under the effects of Icy Howl, but given its already great range, it really doesn't need it. That, and given its all-or-nothing design, I feel it needs to remain easy to punish should your opponent predict it or it's thrown out haphazardly. Finally, for his down special, Blaidd will make use of an iconic ability that's commonly associated with the Soulsborne genre, although he'll put his own unique spin on it as, again, he doesn't need to conform to the rules of the game he's a part of. Parry Claw. With this, Blaidd will hold his hand out in front of himself in a defensive manner, anticipating an incoming attack. Once an opponent makes contact with Blaidd's hand, he will grab them violently before smashing them into the ground behind him, causing them to bounce off the floor and up into the air. Much like your regular counter, this move's damage will scale depending on the attack that Blaidd counters, although it does sport its own fixed knockback growth, which can potentially allow the player to perform follow-up attacks at lower percents. When under the effects of Icy Howl, Parry Claw's damage multiplier will be doubled, allowing for huge damage numbers and dangerous kill setups. But more importantly, this move gains the ability to deflect projectiles, with Blaidd launching them into the air and away from himself with a powerful claw swipe. Next is the final smash, and for this, Blaidd will call upon the assistance of his master, Lady Ranni, in order to destroy all that would stand in their way, together. This is Dark Side of the Moon. When the final smash starts, Blaidd will launch a huge wave of frost forward using his Royal Greatsword, freezing up the 3 opponents in its path into a massive block of ice. At this point, Blaidd will unleash a series of powerful blows on his trapped opponents, with each powerful hit causing the ice to chip and crack. With one final hit, Blaidd will launch the frozen foes off the ground and up into the air, putting them right in the path of Ranni, who will drop a Dark Moon spell on them. The force of this magical blast will cause the ice to shatter and launch foes. The force of this magic blast will cause the ice to shatter and launch all caught foes away. And at this point, Blaidd and Ranni will share a few words before Ranni disappears in a wave of ice and snow, all while Blaidd returns to his idle animation. For his victory theme, Blaidd will use the same theme I gave to the Tarnished before him, as it's without a doubt the best victory theme for a character from Elden Ring. The Elden Ring main theme. While there are other themes that could arguably work for Blaidd, this triumphant theme really is the best choice. Victory animation number 1 will show Blaidd perched on top of a decrepit tower, his head hung low before letting out a long, echoing howl. At this point, a dark moon will appear in the background, signifying his connection to Ranni and referencing one of the trailers for Elden Ring. Victory animation number 2 will have Blaidd stab the Royal Greatsword into the ground, all before taking in a deep breath and looking onward in a stoic manner. If Blaidd uses this animation during a doubles match, he'll follow up the stab by complimenting his teammate. Finally, victory animation number 3 will have Blaidd kneel down before Ranni, her hands caressing him and petting his head as she congratulates him on a battle well fought. While the connection between Ranni and Blaidd is made clear, we never actually see these two interact in Elden Ring. Consider this a way of alleviating that glaring issue. Taunt number 1 will have Blaidd rest his blade on his shoulder, giving a smaller mark as it emits a wave of cold magic. After saying his 2 cents about his opponent, he'll swing his blade down to the ground and return to his idle animation. Taunt number 2 will have Blaidd take a drink from his own personal flask of Crimson Tears, which is a reference to the basic healing animation seen in Elden Ring. A unique thing to note is that Blaidd's flask is actually different from the flasks of other NPCs, where his health will heal over time as opposed to healing all at once. Finally, Taunt number 3 will have Blaidd kneel down and focus, letting out a long, slow breath as he holds his blade up over his shoulder. This stance is designed to be a reference to the same pose struck by Guts on the cover of Berserk Volume 28, along with the fact that Blaidd himself is a reference to Guts. Although, if you're a fan of the Souls series, chances are high that you know that he isn't the first one to earn said moniker. Blaidd's colors will make reference to various characters the player will encounter on their adventure in the lands between, although a couple of colors are designed to be references to other characters from the Souls series. While some might be confused as to why that is, let's just say that they share the same inspiration. Color number 1 is Blaidd's standard appearance, which is a set of silver armor worn underneath his stylish and arguably comfy blue cloak. Blaidd's sword and fur color will remain the same regardless of which color the player uses, mainly to keep readability consistent and because it's an important part of Blaidd's design that I feel should be maintained. Color number 2 will turn Blaidd's armor into a shining gold, while his cloak will become a striking shade of red. This is a reference to General Radahn, one of the game's most iconic fights and the main fight that has both the Tarnished and Blaidd fight alongside one another in Elden Ring. Color number 3 will turn Blaidd's armor and cloak a jet black color, although adding golden highlights to his armor and the bottom half of his cloak. This is a reference to Malekith, another iconic boss from Elden Ring and a fellow fighting wolf. Color number 4 will be a Smash Original, with Blaidd's armor being changed to a bluish gray while his cloak becomes a striking purple. If you look closely, this might even be a passing resemblance to another fighting game wolf. Color number 5 will also be a Smash Original, with Blaidd's armor changing to a rose gold tint while his cloak becomes a forest green. This isn't really a reference to anything, I just like the color combination. Color number 6 will warp Blaidd's armor, changing it to a damaged and charred variation of his basic colors while his cloak becomes a darker shade of blue. This color will reference Artorias, an iconic character from the original Dark Souls that shares the same inspirational origins as the half-wolf. Color number 7 will keep Blaidd's silver armor intact, all while changing his cloak to a blood red. This color will reference Slave Knight Gale from Dark Souls 3, one of the game's most iconic fights that, like Artorias before him, also shares its inspirations with Blaidd. Finally, color number 8 will be a unique color, as instead of changing his basic colors like his other options, he'll gain a glowing yellow aura that will warp his color palette. This is a reference to the visual effect that characters gain when they're summoned for combat in Elden Ring, and chances are high that a majority of you have seen this effect at least once in your life, especially when you're coming face to face with a certain boss. Elden Ring is a game that I don't know if I'm ever going to forget. It has recently just passed its first year anniversary while this video is being developed, and it feels just as fresh to play today as it did the day it came out. Possibly more if you count the bug fixes on PC. If my love for Elden Ring isn't apparent enough, all the footage you've seen in this video is from my 8th playthrough of the game, which is my 3rd playthrough I've done since getting every achievement. It really is that great. As for Blaidd himself, he was going to be the character I originally covered for Elden Ring before I made the switch to covering the Tarnished, so the fact that he's finally getting his own video is a long time coming, and I'm very glad to finally see it come out as great as it did. While that's the case, however, Blaidd's chances of getting into Smash are not that great, especially when he's up against not only other characters from Elden Ring, but other characters from the Souls series that have been around for much longer and have much bigger fan bases. That's not to say that Blaidd isn't popular, because he definitely is, and rightfully so, but these other characters have had over a decade of time to build their fan bases. This will definitely not be the last character I cover from the Soulsborne series, as there's plenty of characters I would love to cover but there's no efficient way to play their game. But for Blaidd himself, the most I can hope for is that he's considered for a game like Soul Calibur, as he is a really cool character and definitely deserves better than what fate gave him. Maybe we'll see him again in the DLC for Elden Ring. But for now, this is where Blaidd's tale ends, and we move on to what the future has in store. If you like what you saw, be sure to like and comment as it helps with both the algorithm and general morale. And if you want to see more, be sure to subscribe and press that little bell icon to make sure you never miss a future upload. Until next time, I've been Felicia Fan, and I hope you have a good one.